Good morning, good evening, welcome. Thank you all for joining us for this Microsoft Reactor event. We're happy to have Andrei Fidelman, a software engineer, joining us from the Fluent UI team at Microsoft. Today, he will be covering the Fluent UI series, our journey with experimental stream in Apollo client. This session will run for approximately 30 minutes with times for questions at the end. If this is your first time joining us, please note that for Teams Live, there's a slight delay in the feed from presenter to audience. So when we respond to a question, there may be some lag time. So do just feel free to drop your questions as they come up into the chat, and we'll make sure we'll get to them during the session. Also to note, this event is being recorded and will be available in just a few days on our YouTube channel. So if you're not able to stay for the full extent, or if you want to tune back for some of the content that was covered, it will be available shortly on our Microsoft Reactor channel. At the conclusion of the session, I will be sharing a feedback survey. The Reactor program is always striving to provide new and engaging content. So your feedback really helps us to curate these topics so if you have the opportunity, please fill out that survey. I'll also be dropping the link to our YouTube channel. So if you need it, it'll be there as well. At this time, I will pass the mic over to Andrei. Thank you again, Andrei, for helping us and putting on this series. This is great. And we are happy to have you here at the Reactor.
Hello, thank you, Rebecca, for introducing me. So I think I can start?
Yeah, we're ready for you.
Good, thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I welcome you on our live stream event. I'm Andrei, and today I would like to share with you our journey with the experimental GrapgQL directive stream in Apollo client. So I'm working at Microsoft, especially on Microsoft Teams application, and today I would like to talk with you about one of our investigations which we made during developing the Microsoft Teams application. Before, let's start from the motivation. Let's imagine we have a task when we need to receive some data, for example, list of data, and we need to show them to the user. I assume that a lot of developers faces with this task, and so how it will look like. So let's imagine we fetch request to the server, waiting a bit, receiving the data, and render it in React. In our example, it will be just chat list. And this task, the data flow of it in a nutshell will look like this. So from some business component, we send requests to our services. It goes through some maybe middlewares, receive data, and render it. Not so complicated. But what if we care about performance and we would like to introduce some local cache, for example, local storage or IndexedDB, and we want to keep already prefetched data there? And next time, when we would like to receive the data, we are able to show cache data first and wait for the rest during fetching from the services. And when we receive the rest, we render them as well. From UX perspective, it definitely looks better because user can see data earlier and can start interacting with it. And data flow will look a bit different. We'll introduce kind of resolver or controller, which will decide when and what to show, when and what to fetch. And it's like a composer which will decide what exactly we need to show now. And how to implement this approach in the context of our Apollo client application. There are several ways how to do this. For example, we can introduce reactive variables. So we fetch data, some data already in our in-memory cache. Our variables reactive. It means when we populate additional data to our reactive variable, it will immediately update the components. It's gonna work, but if you want to keep your Apollo cache like a pure function, definitely it will break this principle. Another way how to do this is introduce Apollo subscriptions. Yeah, we subscribe to new, for example, in our case, messages, yeah, and when we receive new messages, we render them immediately. It's also going to work, but it's going to force your backend services to switch from query to subscription, to WebSockets, for example, something like this. And at the same time, it can bring misunderstanding in your application, because basically your backend services can still remain as a query, but your client resolvers will work as a subscription. Yeah, it brings misconsistency in your application. Another way how to cover it is to use experimental stream directive. And today I would like to share with you how to implement it in your Apollo application and what the pitfalls you can face. Yep. Before I start how to do this, what is it? What is a stream directive? So it's a directive in the GrapgQL which applicable only for lists. Yeah, for example, in our case, if we would like to receive the list of films, we're able to apply stream directive to the films. It has few arguments. For example, initial count, its required argument, it's just telling us size of the package. For example, if it's 1, it means we will populate data by element, and immediately this element will go through resolver and to component. If I change it, for example, to 5, it means our resolver will wait when our package receives file elements, and only after that populate it to the next steps and to the component. And to have this connection, it led us to transform our async client resolver into async function generator. So we are able to yield every element. So this is how query will look. But what about payloads? First payload will look the same as if it would be a query. So we have our data structure, person name, films, and list of films. And we also, there is a small difference that now we have an additional flag, has next, absolutely the same meaning as with function generator. It's just telling us if there is still something waiting for us, what we can yield. Next, payloads will have different data structure, but always the same. It's a label, path, data, and has next. What are they? So label is basically some identifier which is telling us what is it payload about. And this label is described in argument of the directive. You can imagine that you can have several streams in your application, but your unidirectional data flow will remain only one. And you need to somehow understand which payload belongs to where. Then we have a path. Path, it's an array type representative of your data structure. For example, person, films, and the index inside the list. The data itself, and again, has next if we have still data to yield. In the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that it's experimental directive. It means that currently in the GraphQL specification, it's a working draft. There is even pull request in the GraphQL.js, and it's even merged. But it's not released as a common release. It's released under a special version, which is 15.4.0 experimental stream deferred.1. It's the exact name of the version of the GraphQL.js. So currently it's publicly available and we can start using it. As it's working draft in GraphQL specification, Apollo client, even version 3, doesn't support it yet. But based on their roadmap, they plan to introduce it in the middle of this year. But what if our business tasks and technical decisions already require to use the streams? Before telling you how to start using it now, let's just go through the workflow, how data goes, and through which business blocks it goes in our Apollo client application. So we have a component, business component, where we have business logic. We use query hook, where we provide our queries. And these parameters goes to our client resolver. Inside the client resolver, we can do any side effects what we want. For example, connect the server or connect our IndexedDB or local storage. When we receive this data, we pass to Apollo links. It's kind of middlewares which can do some additional manipulation with our data. After that, it goes to Apollo in-memory cache, and it connects to the reactive variables, which will go to useQuery, and useQuery will receive the data, and our component gets the data. I'm telling you all this structure because exactly these business blocks we're gonna teach to work with the experimental stream directive. And first, we start from the link. It's the most interesting part and requires the most changes. I will tell you an example of schema link. Schema link, it's an Apollo link which provides executable environment which we can do our GraphQL operation on a provided schema. In a nutshell, it has two different things. First, at the input we receive parameters and we use execute method of the GrapgQL.js. We execute and receive results. Then, using observables, we pass our results to the next links. And if you look closely to these two blocks, you can understand that basically everything already prepared for us to start using streams, because GraphQL.js already support stream directive, and observer next, it's kind of, reactive way of programming with observables. So how are we going to update it? Before, we need to make sure that our result from the execute method of GraphQL.js is async iterable or not. If it's not async iterable, we can assume that it's not stream and pass it as in the previous example. If it's yes, we're going to receive this result and we're going to loop it and yield element by element, receiving payload by payload. And now it's up to us what to do with this payload. We can pass it exactly to the component, or in our case, we decided to accumulate it and loop it over. And when we finish looping, we provide this accumulate data accumulator to the next Apollo links. Next point, what we need to update is Apollo cache, especially its type policies. Yeah. So we're going to update our merge strategy, but it's not something complicated or rocket science. For example, in our case, we just merge incoming data with existing data. But I think it's up to you what you decided on the previous example. If you decided to accumulate, it's enough to merge. If you decided to provide element by element, maybe you can decide to use different merging strategy. Another case, it's a pagination. It's also part of the Apollo cache type policies, but why I would like to pay your attention here is because Apollo client already provides some utilities with the pagination, for example, relay style pagination. So you don't need to create your own pagination strategy, you can use it out of the box. But there is a difference in the concepts, because those utilities from Apollo client expect a bunch of elements which represent a page. Yeah, so we receive page by page. But in our approach with streams, we just provide element by element, and we don't know when page starts and when page ends. And I think it's up to you what you're going to do there. It's also not rocket science to work with this, but here you need to pay attention on it. Next part, which I would like to update for streams, it's a loading state. You remember in the beginning that we were showing user data, so we render it, and we also show some loading state to user that we're still fetching some data. So we need a flag which represent our loading state. useQuery hook from Apollo client already has it, loading, but unfortunately it's not our guy, because loading flag triggers when it receives the first payload, but we need to show the loading state until the last payload. It means we need to do something with it. And the best, what I personally found, is update our schema. So inside the schema, we introduce the flag is loading, and it means that our UI will understand when the loading finished from the data from the schema. 100% it's not the best way how to do this, but if you find it, write me in LinkedIn. And basically that's all what we need to update to start using streams now. And let's wrap it up. So what are the advantages of this approach? Advantages that you don't break the basic principles of the unidirectional data flow. You keep your type policies as a pure function. You don't need to switch from queries to subscription, from REST to WebSockets, and so on. And also, you don't need to wait when Apollo releases stream directive in the middle of this year. But what are disadvantages of it? First is you need to introduce your own custom Apollo link and your custom pagination. I don't think it's a big minus, but still it requires some work around. And big minus from my perspective is that to cover this loading indicator, we need to update our schema. From my perspective, it's bad because it breaks single responsibility and dependency inversion principles. And there are all trade-offs that you need to consider to choose the right approach to cover this case with the partial fetching. That's all. Thank you very much. So I'm now ready to answer your questions, and I'm giving the floor to Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Andrei. That was great. While we wait to see if any questions come in, I will share my screen and I will talk about the upcoming session next week. We'll be back once again with another Fluent UI series session. So next week on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll have managed accessibility with virtualization. So if you are available and tuning in today and want to check out more on Fluent UI, that would be great. You can come through and take a peek at that one as well. If you missed our last session, we had one on Tuesday. That recording should be up on our YouTube station in the next day or so. The Microsoft Reactor presently has 12 physical spaces around the world. We offer content, workshops, sessions at all of those locations, time zones. So if you are joining us from the Americas or Europe or Asia, wherever it is that you're tuning in from, there's a session for everyone at different times. So definitely check out our event calendar. You can go to microsoftreactor.com. You can go to one of our meetup pages if that's how you joined in, and find the location that works best for you for timing wise. You might be, in the East Coast of the US, but you work overnight shifts. So, those hours are really your preferred. So you might find something in London or Tel Aviv or somewhere else that the sessions work best for you. So do check out our calendar and our sessions that are upcoming. I dropped in the chat our link to our YouTube channel. So any past sessions that we've hosted, you can definitely check out there. If you want to add us You can use our Twitter handle, Microsoft Reactor, if you want to do any shout outs. And we recently started a newsletter that's monthly, aka.ms/reactor email sign up if you want to join that. It's once a month. We give you a month ahead notice of any sessions for the following month, whatever we already have on the calendar in your time zone. And then I'm about to share with you the link to our survey. So if you have the opportunity to fill that out and submit, we'd really appreciate it. Again, I mentioned at the start of the session, we use that information for building up future content. Your feedback really helps us dial in on what our audience likes and prefers and wants more of. So do take the time and feel free to submit that survey. The event code that you'll need to enter on the survey is 12996. And then let's just pass back over here to Andrei. I'm not seeing any specific questions coming in. Sometimes people think of questions at a later time. So if they reach out, if there's any contact information you want to share, Andrei, your credentials of some kind, LinkedIn or Twitter or anything, if you want to drop that in the chat, you can. And then our audience, if they have questions down the line, they can also always reach back out. Again, this session will be on our YouTube channel in just a couple of days for all of you tuning in. Let's just give it one more second and see if any last minute questions come through. Okay, I think at this time then, I haven't seen any questions pop up. So Andrei, thank you so much. This was great. Really appreciate you and your team putting this series together. It's fantastic. We had feedback at the last session that there was some audience members really looking forward to talking to the Fluent UI. So I think this is a great opportunity for that. And we will see you all at the next session of this series. Take care, and thank you again, Andrei. Take care to you as well.